The poor girl only had $5.00 for a blind date. The single dad CEO at the next table watched her and paid for the entire dinner. The restaurant buzzed with the quiet murmur of weeknight dinners, soft music playing, glasses clinking gently, silverware tapping porcelain. Candlelight flickered from the center of each table, casting warm shadows against deep wooden booths and navy blue linens. It was not a five-star place, but it was the nicest Haley had ever been to on a date. She stepped inside hesitantly, the bell above the door chiming as if announcing her arrival a little too loudly. Her hand smoothed the sides of her dress, a vintage piece, pearl-colored, fitted at the waist, the fabric just beginning to fray at the edges. It had belonged to her mother. She had only worn it once before, years ago, to her college graduation. Tonight it felt like armor and hope all in one. She had curled her blonde hair that afternoon in her tiny apartment, applying a little makeup she barely had money for. Her lips were a soft pink. Her nerves, however, wore no disguise. The hostess approached with a polite smile. "Reservation for Haley," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "Right this way." She followed the woman to a small table by the window. The light above it glowed softly. It felt like it was waiting for something to happen. Haley sat with care, her purse clutched in her lap, her knees drawn close beneath the table. She glanced once at the time, 6:45 p.m. She was 15 minutes early. Good. She needed time to breathe. Maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. She scanned the room, pretending to look casual, but her eyes landed on the entrance every few seconds. She had met him on a dating app. Aaron. He had seemed kind, thoughtful, not pushy. His messages were short but sweet. When he had suggested this place, she had hesitated at first, then said yes. It had taken her months to say yes to anyone, years if she was honest with herself. At a table not far from hers, a man in a charcoal gray suit stirred a glass of scotch. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes weren't. Ethan Blake had just left a long meeting, one of many lately, but the tension from his day had not followed him into this moment. Instead, his gaze settled on the young woman near the window. She had walked in with so much hope and just a little trembling. Something about her reminded him of the past, of when he used to believe things could begin with a look across a table. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Haley shifted in her seat. She checked her phone again. No messages. She scrolled through the last one he had sent earlier that afternoon. "Can't wait to see you tonight." She smiled at it again, as if trying to remind herself it had been real. At 7:15, she sent a quick message. "Hey, I'm here, just checking in." Still nothing. She waited, looked up each time someone walked in, tried not to fidget with her napkin too much. At 7:30, she called. It rang once. Voicemail. A server approached her table gently. "Miss, would you like to go ahead and order something? We're starting to fill up." Haley blinked. "Oh, I'm actually waiting for someone. Just a little longer." The server nodded and moved away. Haley opened her small purse. Inside was a folded $5 bill, her emergency fund, if she was being honest. She had not planned on ordering much, maybe tea if she absolutely had to, but she had hoped the man would arrive and offer to share a meal. She had hoped for something more than this. Her phone buzzed. A message. She opened it. "Wow, you actually went. I was just messing with you, sorry. But you're not really my type. Not worth the Uber." Another message came in right after. "You seem nice, but seriously, you thought I was actually coming?" The screen blurred. She blinked hard, forcing back the sting. Her jaw tightened. She could feel people around her, couples laughing, waiters moving, glasses clinking, but it all turned to static. Her fingers curled around her napkin. She refused to cry. Not here. Ethan, still seated nearby, caught the moment she put her phone down. He had not heard the words, but he had seen enough. He saw the color drain from her face. He saw the way she straightened her spine, like it was the only thing holding her up. And he saw the familiarity in it all. Because once, long ago, he had waited too. Not for a girl to show up, but for someone to believe he was enough. Haley sat still for a long moment, fingers trembling around the napkin in her lap. Her face was pale, her eyes dry but glassy. There was a tightness in her posture that said she wanted to vanish, to fold herself small enough to slip through the cracks in the tile floor. Ethan watched from the next table over, saying nothing. He had not meant to linger after dinner, but something about the girl by the window had drawn him in from the moment she arrived. There was a specific look in her eyes, something between bravery and fear, and now there was only the quiet ache of disappointment spread across her face like a bruise. He saw the way she shifted slightly in her seat, pressing her hand gently against her stomach. She was hungry. Not just emotionally, but literally hungry. She had been drinking water, no food. Her eyes flicked toward the server's station, as if calculating how long she could sit there before someone asked her to leave. She reached for her coat. Slowly, like every movement weighed more than it should, she stood. Her purse was already in her hand, and she turned toward the door with hesitant steps. Just as she moved, a server appeared beside her with a plate in hand. A warm, fragrant pasta dish and a glass of sparkling lemonade. "Excuse me, miss," the server said with a smile. "Your order?" Haley blinked, confused. I didn't order anything." "It was taken care of," the server said. "Someone requested it for you, and your tab has been covered." Haley froze. Her brows furrowed as she looked around, uncertain. Her first instinct was fear. Was this some kind of joke? Another cruel trick? Then a voice came from just behind her, calm and low. "It's not charity," Ethan said. "It's a reminder. You deserve to eat, even if the world tries to tell you otherwise." Haley turned, startled. Ethan stood, one hand resting casually on the back of his chair. His expression was unreadable, except for the soft honesty in his eyes. He wasn't smiling to impress. He wasn't pitying her. He simply saw her. He pulled out the chair across from hers without waiting for an invitation and sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, softly, he said, "Take care of your stomach before you try taking care of someone else's heart." Haley sat down slowly, her eyes wide. It was not the line she expected. It was not a pickup. It was not an insult. It was true. No one had ever said something so gently and hit so deeply. She looked down at the food. Her hands stayed in her lap. "You did not have to do that." "I know," he replied. Silence stretched between them. But it was not awkward. It was honest. Haley glanced at him again. He looked expensive, the kind of man she would never expect to sit across from her voluntarily. His suit looked tailored, his watch understated but clearly high-end. But his face was calm, curious, and kind. She cleared her throat. "You do not know me." "True," Ethan said, "but I saw enough." She hesitated. "And what exactly did you see?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low. "Someone who showed up, someone who hoped, someone who waited longer than she should have, but not because she was desperate, because she believed. That still matters." Her throat tightened. No one had ever put it that way. People always told her she was naive, soft-hearted, too hopeful for her own good. But this stranger, this man with gentle eyes, had called her brave without using the word. She finally lifted her fork and took a bite. The food was warm, real, and it was the first proper meal she had had in days. Ethan watched her for a second, then leaned back in his chair. "I did not mean to interfere," he said, "but you reminded me of someone I used to be." Haley looked up. "And who is that?" He smiled faintly. "A guy who thought he needed to be something else to be worth showing up for." Her eyes softened. Something unspoken passed between them, a small flicker of understanding, of recognition. She still felt small, still felt out of place, but somehow with him sitting there, not pitying her, not mocking her, it felt like she was allowed to exist at that table, to eat, to breathe, to be seen. Haley sat still long after the dinner had ended. The plate in front of her was empty, but the weight in her chest remained full of things she had not said and didn't know how to. When Ethan stood to leave, he simply slid a small card across the table, without pressure or expectation. "I come here often, for coffee, not company." She looked up at him, eyes still a little guarded. He gave a small nod, more of understanding than farewell, and left. A week passed. Classes, work, library shifts, late nights studying. Haley tried to shake the evening from her mind, but his words lingered. Not just the ones he said aloud, but the ones he didn't. She had not expected him to see her so clearly, and even more, to respond with kindness without asking for anything in return. It was a quiet Thursday morning when she walked into a cozy cafe tucked between the community college library and the bookstore. It was the kind of place she stopped by only when her budget allowed, usually for a plain black coffee and the free Wi-Fi. She was fumbling with her worn coin purse at the counter when a familiar voice reached her ears. "Make that 2, Ethan said to the barista. "She looks like someone who might need oat milk today." Haley turned, surprised to see him seated in the corner, laptop open, sleeves rolled up, the same calm smile on his face. "You remembered my name," she said softly, as she sat down with the cup he handed her. "I remembered your courage," he replied. Name was the easy part. She blinked, unsure how to answer, but the words warmed something small and tired in her. They sat in a comfortable quiet. The morning sun filtered through the windows, drawing soft gold streaks across the table. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans. It was the kind of space that invited conversation, but only if it came naturally. "You work around here?" she asked eventually. He nodded. "Sometimes. This place is close to one of our product research partners." Haley gave a polite smile, unsure what more to say. Ethan leaned back slightly. "You know, I completely botched our last campaign. We tried to push a new toddler snack line, and the slogan ended up sounding like we were promoting chewing gum for babies. It was not our proudest moment." Haley let out a small, genuine laugh. He continued, sharing how a food influencer roasted them online, complete with a meme that went viral. He recounted it not with arrogance or self-deprecation, but with the kind of humor that comes from someone who had learned not to take failure personally. Haley relaxed. No pity, no questions about her past, no awkward comments about that dinner. Just a man sharing a story. Not as a CEO, just as a person. She sipped her coffee. "That slogan sounds like something my anatomy professor would hate." He grinned. "I could use someone like you in the copywriting department." She raised a brow. "I am a broke nursing student, not a branding expert." "Exactly," he said. "You read people better than the marketers do." They chatted for a while about coffee preferences, about weird childhood snacks, about how she once tried to cut her own bangs with safety scissors. The lightness of it surprised her. When she stood to leave, she expected him to say something to extend the moment, but he just smiled, nodded, and let her go. No pressure, no invitation, just respect. And as she walked away, Haley realized she was smiling again. Not because someone had rescued her, but because someone had listened, and remembered, and laughed with her. For the first time in years, she felt like she had shared a table not out of desperation, but out of choice. And maybe, just maybe, that made all the difference. The conference room was modest but thoughtfully arranged, with white folding chairs facing a screen where colorful slides showed cartoon vegetables and smiling toddlers. A long table in the back offered fruit cups, granola samples, and boxed smoothies, all labeled with the company's name, Blaine Organics. Haley sat in the third row, notepad in her lap, pen poised. She wore her light blue scrub top under a simple cardigan, her hair pulled back in a low bun. Around her sat young mothers, a few pediatricians, and a couple of curious nutrition students. It was not often she got to attend events like this. She usually could not afford the time or the registration fees. But Ethan had texted her a week earlier with a personal invite and a waived fee. Thought this might align with your studies, no pressure. So she came. The presenter introduced the topic, Early Childhood Nutrition, Food Safety, and Allergen Awareness in Store-Bought Products. As the slides continued, Haley raised her hand twice, once to ask about preservative levels in toddler snacks, and once to point out a discrepancy in the allergy labeling system. Both times, the speaker paused, surprised. "That's a great question," he said after the second one, "and a really sharp observation." Ethan, standing near the back in a navy blazer, watched quietly. He had seen plenty of ambitious interns, sharp employees, and confident experts, but there was something rare about Haley's voice. She was not trying to impress anyone. She just cared. She asked questions like someone who would one day be in a position to save a life because of them. After the workshop, while others milled around the snack table or handed out resumes, Haley slipped out quietly, heading toward the library down the block. She loved this library. It was warm, tucked between two office buildings, and had a quiet study room with a view of a tiny garden. She had always thought it looked like a secret place for people who were trying to grow, just like the plants outside. She did not expect to see Ethan there. But when she pushed the glass door open, there he was, standing by the children's reading corner, holding the hand of a small girl in a yellow sweater dress. Haley blinked. Ethan looked up and smiled. "Hey," he said, gently shifting the little girl behind him. "Was not sure I would see you here." I just came to return a few books," she replied, holding up the small stack in her arms. Her eyes drifted to the child, who was now peeking out from behind Ethan's legs. "This is Lily," he said softly. "My daughter." Haley's eyebrows lifted slightly. Ethan's voice shifted, softer, more careful. "She's 3, a little shy at first." Haley crouched slightly, offering a small smile. "Hi, Lily." The girl blinked up at her, hesitant. Then slowly she stepped forward, her tiny hand reaching out to touch the hem of Haley's cardigan. "She's pretty," Lily said to no one in particular. Haley chuckled. "You're very pretty, too." There was a pause. Then Lily leaned close, sniffed the air near Haley's shoulder, and whispered, "She smells like Mommy." The air stilled. Ethan's expression froze. His breath caught, just barely, the kind of silence that cracked with memory. Haley stood still, unsure, the weight of the child's words sinking into the space between them. She glanced at Ethan. His face was unreadable, but his hands, gripping Lily's small shoulder, were shaking. Haley knelt again, level with the child. Her voice was gentle, careful. "Well," she said softly, "that's a big compliment. Your mommy must have smelled like kindness." Lily nodded solemnly. Ethan looked away, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. He blinked twice, then cleared his throat. "Okay, sweet pea," he murmured. "Let's go pick a book." Lily ran off toward the picture books. Ethan stayed behind for a beat, his eyes still slightly unfocused. He turned to Haley. "She passed 2 years ago," he said quietly. "Lily does not usually say that." Haley nodded, understanding more than she could put into words. Children remember more with their hearts than their heads. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, something in his gaze was not guarded. Just open. It started with shared moments that never felt like obligations. Haley stopped by Ethan's office once a week, sometimes just to drop off freshly annotated documents from his latest research on toddler nutrition. Other times she stayed a little longer, sipping tea in the corner while he reviewed slides for an upcoming product pitch. She had a way of catching inconsistencies, of asking the kind of questions that real mothers would one day ask, about the labels. Ethan appreciated her insight more than most consultants he had ever hired. But it was not just work. It was her presence, quiet, thoughtful, never demanding, that made those moments linger. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, when his nanny had class or emergencies, Ethan would call Haley, not as a last resort, but because Lily seemed to respond to her in a way that eased the edges of their routine. Haley would pick her up from daycare, braid her hair before bed, and always read 2 books, never 1, never 3. It became something unspoken, but familiar. Haley never asked Ethan about his past, and he never pushed her about hers. There was no confession of feelings, no grand romantic gestures. But when she laughed, he found himself watching too long, and when he stayed up late working, he'd sometimes draft a message just to tell her something silly Lily had said, but delete it before sending. It was fragile and real. Then one evening, the line between help and something more blurred. Lily had a low-grade fever. Ethan had stayed home from work, juggling Zoom calls with thermometers and lukewarm soup. By 4 p.m. he was exhausted. At 4:30, Haley showed up with a small canvas bag and a gentle knock on the door. "You did not sound okay on the phone," she said simply. He let her in. The house smelled faintly of lemon and medicine. Lily lay on the couch under a thin blanket, her cheeks flushed. She opened her eyes when Haley approached and reached out wordlessly. Haley sat beside her, ran a cool hand across her forehead, then pulled something from her bag. A soft towel soaked in herbal compress, wrapped in wax paper to keep it cool. "She used to love this at the hospital," Haley said. "A little lavender helps the head and the heart." Ethan watched as she pressed the towel gently against Lily's forehead. Lily let out a soft breath and closed her eyes. Minutes passed. Haley hummed under her breath, the softest lullaby. Then she began to sing, so quiet it might have been mistaken for just breath. Ethan froze. He knew that song. He had not heard it in almost 3 years. It was the lullaby his wife used to hum when Lily was still small enough to sleep in their bed after a bad dream. A gentle melody from a folk tune, altered with nonsense lyrics, and a line that always made Lily giggle. "The moon wears socks when it's cold at night." Haley sang it word for word. Ethan's knees gave slightly, and he sank into the armchair behind her, his breath shallow. He did not interrupt. He did not move. But the tears came, unstoppable and sudden. Years of holding back, of keeping everything neat and manageable. Haley's voice trembled for half a beat as she noticed, but she kept singing. When the song ended, she looked over her shoulder. Ethan sat with his face in his hands, silent. "I did not know," she whispered. He shook his head. "You could not have." A long pause stretched between them. "She used to sing that every night," he said hoarsely. "I thought Lily had forgotten." Haley looked down at the little girl who now slept peacefully in her lap. "Children don't forget love," she said. "They just wait to hear it again." He nodded slowly. No declarations, no confessions. But when Haley gently placed a blanket over Lily's legs and leaned her head against the back of the couch, Ethan did not move. They sat like that for a long time, one man, one woman, and a sleeping child, without naming what they were becoming. But it was already there. Free, not separate anymore, just quietly becoming one. The letter arrived in a plain envelope with the name of the scholarship committee printed neatly at the top. Haley stared at it for a full 5 minutes before tearing it open with shaking hands. She read the first line once, then again, then a third time, before letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The local police force was his day job. It had seemed as if she and Joe had become, like him, a part of the public. Full tuition, 1-year program, pediatric specialization, out of state. It was everything she had worked for, everything she had quietly hoped for on nights when the world felt too heavy and the future too far away. But instead of elation, her chest tightened, because it meant leaving the quiet warmth of Ethan's kitchen, leaving Lily's bedtime stories, leaving the strange, steady rhythm of something that felt almost like a life. She waited 3 days before telling him. They were at the park, Lily chasing soap bubbles while Haley sat beside Ethan on the bench, the letter folded neatly in her coat pocket. "I got the scholarship," she said softly. Ethan turned to her, eyebrows raised, smile immediate. "Haley, that's incredible." She nodded, eyes fixed on the ground. "It's in Oregon, starts in August, 1 year." The wind rustled through the trees, scattering golden leaves across their feet. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You should go." Her eyes snapped up, surprised. "You think so?" He nodded. "You earned it. But what if—" She swallowed. "What if you think I'm just leaving when things get good, like I used you for stability and now I'm walking away?" Ethan's face softened. He shook his head slowly. "Loving someone," he said, "doesn't mean holding them. It means not clipping their wings." The words landed deeper than she expected. They settled into places inside her that still feared abandonment, still believed she had to prove her worth by staying. Haley blinked fast, then turned away, watching Lily chase a bubble that floated just out of reach. She left in early August. The night before her flight, Ethan invited her and Lily to dinner at his place. They ate pasta by candlelight, Lily insisted, and made a paper chain of days until you come back, 1 link for each week. When it was time to leave, Haley knelt down to say goodbye to Lily. But before she could speak, Lily threw her arms around her neck and whispered, "You're not going far. Daddy says hearts don't care about distance." Haley closed her eyes, pulling the little girl closer. It was the kind of goodbye she had never had before, one without guilt, without fear, just love. She looked up to Ethan, who stood by the door, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable but warm. No promises, no wait for me, just a silent understanding. That something real could survive the space between. That love, in its truest form, does not demand proximity. Haley cried that night, not because she was being left behind, but because, for the first time, she was being let go without being let down. The community hospital looked almost exactly the same. Sterile walls, soft beeping monitors, nurses in sensible shoes, rushing between patients. But something about walking in this time felt entirely different. Haley stood at the staff entrance, clutching her new ID badge, her white coat freshly pressed. Registered nurse was printed beneath her name in bold letters. She had done it. After a year of grueling coursework, night shifts, and missing home more than she ever expected, she was back, stronger, steadier, and more certain of who she was than ever before. The morning passed in a blur of introductions, paperwork, and catching up with familiar faces from her intern days. Just before lunch, a nurse handed her a sleek white envelope. "There's an event this afternoon. You're invited," she said with a wink. The invitation was simple, elegant. Product launch, her first spoon. A celebration of nourishment, dignity, and second chances. Location, rooftop garden, Blake Nutrition Co. Time, 3:00 p.m. She knew instantly who it was from. At exactly 3:00, Haley stepped out of the elevator into the rooftop garden, an airy space lined with flowering herbs, hanging lights, and rows of white chairs. A long table in the center displayed pastel-colored packaging, each box marked with the same soft script. Her first spoon, for the women who stayed hungry to feed hope. Haley stopped in her tracks. Her throat tightened as she looked at the design. It was subtle, but the silhouette on the side of the box, a woman cradling a child close, a spoon in her other hand, was unmistakably familiar. Ethan was standing near the podium, speaking to a small crowd of investors, staff, and press. His voice was calm, focused, but when his eyes met hers across the rooftop, the corners of his mouth lifted, just slightly. He finished his speech, shook a few hands, then walked directly toward her. "I wasn't sure you would come," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd still remember me," she replied softly. "Impossible," he said, eyes warm. They stood for a moment in silence, the noise of the event fading into the background. Then, slowly, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He did not kneel. He did not speak in grand declarations. He simply opened it, revealing a delicate ring with a single, unassuming stone. "I don't want to save you," he said quietly. "I want to stay. If you'll let me." Haley stared at the ring, then at Ethan, his face older than when they first met, eyes still carrying the weight of his past, but now softened by something else. She did not cry. She did not tremble. She simply nodded, not because she was overwhelmed, not because it felt like a fairy tale, but because, for the first time in her life, she was choosing love not out of need or fear, but from a place of peace. A place where two people, each broken in their own ways, had become whole enough to stand side by side. And this time, neither of them was running. The soft hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the scent of rosemary bread filled the same mid-range restaurant where, not long ago, Haley had sat alone, nervous, hopeful, and invisible. But tonight, everything was different. She walked in hand with Ethan, their fingers laced naturally, comfortably. Lily trotted just ahead of them in her little navy dress, her pigtails bouncing with every step. The hostess greeted them warmly and led them to a familiar corner table. Except this time, there were 3 chairs. Ethan pulled one out for Haley, then helped Lily into hers. No separation, no silent observing from afar, just one table, shared. Haley looked around the space. The same soft lighting, the same polished wood, even the same server who had once gently asked if she would like to order. It was surreal. Ethan handed her the menu with a playful smile. "Order everything you want," he said. "Tonight we eat for the girl who waited 45 minutes and still believed someone would show up." Haley let out a soft laugh, but her eyes shimmered. She glanced down at the menu, then back at him. "You remember everything." "I remember you," he said simply. Just then, Lily reached into her tiny backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She spread it proudly on the table. It was a crayon drawing, a little house with a yellow door, a sun with a smiling face, and 3 stick figures at a dinner table, one with long yellow hair, one tall with glasses, and one small with purple shoes. "This is us," Lily said, "and that's spaghetti, because Mommy Haley likes spaghetti." Haley's breath caught. She reached across the table and gently touched the paper, her fingers trembling just slightly. "Did you draw this today?" she asked. Lily nodded. "At preschool, teacher said to draw our favorite thing. I picked dinner with you and Daddy." Ethan looked down at his daughter, then across at Haley. No words were needed. The simplicity of the moment said it all. Candlelight flickered. Laughter from another table rippled past. A waiter set down warm bread and water without interrupting the intimacy of what was unfolding. Haley stared at the 2 people in front of her, the man who had once quietly paid for her dinner without a word, and the little girl who saw her not as a stranger, but as home. She reached for her glass of water, took a breath, and whispered, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the kind of quiet certainty that only comes after surviving the storm. "You were never late," she said, eyes locked with Ethan's. "I just needed to believe long enough to wait." Ethan did not respond right away. He reached for her hand across the table, laced his fingers with hers, and nodded. Outside the restaurant, night had settled in. But inside, at one small table with 3 chairs, something had begun. Not a rescue, not a fairy tale. Just 3 people, 1 table, and a future built on the simple, quiet miracle of showing up. If this story moved you, don't forget to support soul-stirring stories by hitting that hype button and subscribing to our channel. Every view, every like, every share helps us bring you more heartfelt tales like The Girl Who Waited 45 Minutes. Because somewhere out there, someone's still waiting to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next story that might change everything.